When I was a kid, I always had a fascination with maps. From historical maps in school textbooks to the fantastical maps like what came with the physical copy of Skyrim back in the day. I'd often find myself sketching out strange lands with little markers for nameless towns and cities that just existed in my head. By the time I was 14, I started to focus more on specific projects. I created 3 continents and began to name regions, oceans, islands, and draft budding lore about scholarly goblins, undead plagues, and seafaring cat people. I began to create pantheons and religions to follow them. Most of these ideas were for a video game I planned to create, but like most of us, those are now just dreams lost to time. My views and ideas have evolved much since then, and any world building of late focuses less on potential game mechanics and more on raw immersion. In tandem with my cartographical interest, I've also been an avid history enthusiast since I was a small child. I particularly liked learning about the Bronze Age cultures of antiquity and the early Middle Ages. Video games like Age of Empires 2 and Age of Mythology cemented these topics as areas of special significance to me. Much of the immersion I refer to with world building comes from fact gathering about these time periods. By understanding how people lived back then, I can craft worlds that feel like they live and breathe. And by learning about mythology, I also retain an appreciation for fantasy. Dungeons and Dragons, for all its flaws, was the perfect catalyst in my late adolescence for a more applied world building. After attending regular sessions in homebrew settings, I developed several worlds, sparking a new passion for brainstorming through tabletop role playing. I remained in a sort of creative stasis for several years, which finally reached a breaking point when I started exploring a new tabletop game, The One Ring, second edition to be more specific. Tolkien's Middle Earth has to be one of the most well developed settings ever produced by a single individual. His focus on grounded realism is an inspiration to me, though I've yet to read The Lord of the Rings in its entirety. Blasphemous, I know. But for those unfamiliar with the One Ring tabletop game, it's a TTRPG made specifically for the world of Arda, set in the time between Bilbo's return from Erebor and his 111th birthday. The game puts a particular focus on the northwestern region of Eriador, an empty land of ruins and scattered peoples, unless you find yourself in the peaceful solitude of the Shire. I'll talk more about my love of the game in another video perhaps, but for the purposes of this recollection, it was this game that shattered my perception of tabletop games and my previous D&D-ified approach to applied world building. After years of playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, I'd look at settings and characters in movies and video games through the lens of a dungeon master. I draw parallels between archetypes with the class system of 5e or spellcasting equivalents when it came to magic. It seemed to me that anything and everything was capable of running as a D&D campaign, which still may be true. But right at the end of 2024, I encountered a Lord of the Rings role-playing sourcebook for 5th edition, and seeing as much of the Forgotten Realms was derived from Tolkien's works, I immediately dove in and started learning how to play D&D in Middle-earth. As I pored through the pages of this setting, it repeatedly referenced its original game, and though I'd encountered several other tabletop systems by this point, I was never interested enough to learn how to play them. I hosted a short starter campaign for my brothers over Christmas using the 5e supplement, and though we enjoyed it, things just felt off, like a mockery rather than a definitive experience. As I went back to better understand the mechanics, the callbacks to the One Ring continued to gnaw at me. By the end of spring, I finally gave in and started learning how to play the official One Ring 2e tabletop role-playing game. After watching a short video on character creation, I was mind blown. My perception of fantasy as one big game of D&D was gone. I continued to study the game mechanics of this tailored experience, and through my research, I found myself revisiting old worlds I'd made. Instead of seeing them as potential campaigns, I saw them as unique sandboxes with which I could do whatever I wanted. Inspiration drove me to reinvent these worlds from the ground up. I combined my projects into one grand project, still referred to as the Gnawing Coast. I made a couple videos about it, but by now most of the info is outdated. What was before a set of human kingdoms with mountain-dwelling dwarves, desert elves, and dragon clans was stripped of its D&D roots. Gone was the foundation of the player's handbook. and in walked something entirely new. I started by revisiting the fundamentals: time, space, overarching plots and themes. I thought about how I could make this world feel special and unique rather than another flavor of candy. Concepts like tonal magic and a spirit world were where I looked to first, giving me a foundation to rebuild the races and the cultures of the region. Knowledge I gathered from watching space documentaries as a teen helped me ponder the outer world and the factors that can make it visually striking. The time period shifted from generic fantasy renaissance to early feudal, where chainmail hauberks over woolen tunics were trendy. I drew inspiration from my wife's Slavic heritage and my own Germanic roots to create distinct societies rooted in spiritual beliefs. On a cosmic scale, I began experimenting with planetary elements like the type of star that might host the system and whether the world itself could be a tidally locked moon rather than an Earth remake. I thought about past civilizations and the mark they would leave on the land, much like the scattered remnants of lost empires across our own world. I know all of this may sound a bit abstract, but all of these ideas became the groundwork for what the Gnawing Coast transformed into. The project has turned into something far richer than I first imagined. Stories of lost knowledge, strange gods, and how people adapt to otherworldly threats using magic as fragile as glass. It's still a work in progress, but through it all, I was reminded why I loved creating in the first place: building something alive, piece by piece. Thank you all for watching and making it this far into the video. The looming winter weather has me in a more contemplative state, so if you've watched my videos before, perhaps that's nothing new. If you're interested in finding out more about the Gnawing Coast, let me know in the comments. I'd also like to thank my channel members Dagonite and Homomania for their support. You guys are awesome. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe for more feudal facts. See you all in the next one.